welcome to another edition of XTIVIA's Database Snacktime Snippets. I'm Laura Nogaj, Senior MySQL DBA. Today, I want to discuss two things. Chunking, what I call chunking DML operations. So looping through DML operations and committing X number of records. In this case, we had a client who wanted to delete 60% of their table data. And that percentage ranged in the gigabytes. And the table they wanted to delete from had a foreign key constraint associated with it. So there was a parent-child relationship with that table. So what I wanted to do prior to deleting is I wanted to back up that data using MySQL dump and MySQL dump's where clause option. So that's what I'm going to discuss today, these two items. So here we go. In this PowerPoint slide, I'm going to go over at a high level the steps, and then I'm going to give you a demo. So here we have a table. It's a parent table called transaction, and the child table is called CLBK. And as you can see, there's a constraint, a foreign key constraint. So this is the child of transaction. So the primary key in the callback table is callback ID, and the foreign key is transaction ID. So we have the parent on the left and the child on the right. And significantly, that constraint in the child table has an on-delete cascade option. So that's what let me know, okay, when I delete records from the transaction table, those deletes will cascade to the callback table. In this scenario, what we typically do is we use what's called purging architecture. And when you do regular table purging, database data purging, a lot of times there's an archive component to that. In this case, there was not. We create what's called a candidates table. And the candidates table has the primary keys or the transaction IDs that we want to delete. So here in the candidates table, for this setup, we have a primary key on the candidates table, which is just an auto-incremented primary key. Then we have the associated transaction ID. And in this case, we also have the callback ID, because what I figured out after the fact was if I added that callback ID to the candidates table, I could then back up that callback data. So here is an example insert into the candidates table in the upper right. And I'm going to also demo a second insert for just a specific transaction ID. Now, here's the MySQL dump with the where clause option. So what I was able to do is I was able to dump records from the transaction table using a nested subquery from the candidates table. And I was able to do the same for the callback table. And this is what made me add the callback ID in the candidates table. And then I'm going to show you, I'm going to validate, I'm going to import those dump files created in the previous slide to show you that I really was able to get that transaction and the associated child records in that dump file. And then lastly, here is, I have a typo here. Here is the procedure that performs the DML. Yeah, we'll have that included in this presentation. So now I'm going to go ahead and demo what I've just showed you here. So let's see, I'm going to show databases. Let me go ahead and show tables. And let me see if I have any data in my transaction table. $35 records in my transaction table. Okay, and 100. So I need to set this up. So let me set this up and populate this table. So I'm just going to set foreign key checks off so I can truncate transaction, truncate callback. And let me see if I have any records in that candidate table. I'm just going to go ahead and truncate it. All right, now let me import my data. Okay, do you not believe I'm in the right directory? So there we go. And so I had been working on this setup previously. So let me clean this up. All right, I'm going to go into MySQL again, use this vendor database. Okay, and I'm going to import the data for the primary table and import the data for the children. And so we'll go ahead and select count from transaction table. So 3059 records in transaction. Okay, and 10,000 in the callback table. Okay, so in the client's environment, these numbers were massive. They were in the, they were in the tens of millions of rows. So what I just have here is a small sample. So for this demo, what I'm just going to show you is I'm going to just insert a specific transaction ID into my candidates table. Okay. And so basically, if we were to say, let's see, select, okay, so there's the, this is where transaction ID equals 407.81172. So I know that's the primary key on the transaction table. And but I want to show you how many records were in the child table. Okay, so there are 40 records in the child table that have this transaction ID. So callback ID is the primary key. Transaction ID is the 40 is 40 records. So again, The transaction table is the parent. It's got one transaction ID of 407811172. The child table is the callback table. Callback ID is a unique key. Transaction ID is the foreign key. There are 40 records in the child table. So let me just, we can see here when I did the insert that 40 records did go inside the candidate table, but I'm just going to show again. Okay, so there's 40 records in there. Okay, so now what I want to do is, now I want to do the MySQL dump command. So here, and what I want to do is I just want to dump the one transaction record from the transaction table and the 40 records from the callback table. That's all I want to back up. Now, depending on what your candidate where clause is, here it's a transaction ID, but in the real scenario, it was where transaction table update time is less than 6 months ago. So they wanted to delete all the data that was older than 6 months. Okay, and those numbers were in the tens of millions. So the candidate table would have had tens of millions of candidates in there. Now I'm going to run the MySQL dump command. So let me just exit out of here. And the MySQL dump command is going to look like this. And then like this. Okay, and I've created these two files. Now I want to go back into MySQL. And I'm going to show databases, use this vendor validation schema, show tables. I'm going to import that data because I want to show you that the MySQL dump only dumped those specific records. So let me, I have to set foreign key checks. I'm going to truncate these two tables in this validation. So I need to set the foreign key checks to and truncate. And now I'm going to bring this one in, this one in, and okay, one record was in there, like I wanted. And 40 in the callback table. Okay, so now I'm going to, let me go ahead and set my foreign key checks back on. Show databases, use vendor. Okay, now's the time when we actually do the purging, and here's the procedure that performs the deletes. Quickly, the way this works is, we perform this select min serial number, max serial number from the candidates table. Okay, and we set this variable to the chunk size that we want. And we're going to loop through, so while, this variable L2 ID is less than, the max ID, or it's less than equal to the min ID, right, loop. And this is the chunking. So the chunking in this demo, I'm going to do 100 records at a time, but and we'll only go through one loop because there's only 40 records in there. But in a big case, you would do, 1,000 records at a time, 5,000 records at a time, 10,000 records at a time. And so the idea is that, you perform your DML in the loop in these chunks, and you're committing in chunks. And that's where the chunking of the DML comes into play. And so we do this because we don't want to have one big, long, giant delete running that's going to delete, 10 million rows, right? So, and this will outperform, a 10 million row delete, exponentially. So there's the procedure. I just created it, and now I'm going to execute it. Oh. And so now if we, so that's as simple as that. It completed in 100th of a second. So now if we just select count from the transaction table, we did have 3059 transactions. We now have 3058. And if we do a select count from the callback table, we'll have 40 less records in there. So that kind of concludes our demo. Thank you for watching, and please join us for more in the future.